英語のどの時間です。
Hello, everybody. This is Kaz. How are you? Today, I would like you to listen to my English from 10 years ago. This is way before I met Eigo Nodo approach, way before Eigo Nodo paradigm was invented. So it would be very interesting. I think this was about 10 years ago from my presentation at the University of Tokyo. Okay, let's listen to it.
Does it work?
Okay. So I talked to 20 minutes and 15?
Is this on? Okay.
All right, my name is Kaz Uweka with co-authors Kathy and Reggie from the University of South Florida. I'm a postdoc at the University of Chicago, postdoc at Kyoto University, postdoc at other institutions, and this also came up from my postdoc research at the University of South Florida. Now we are, one more thing. The dependent variable of this research is that the student engagement. Engagement meaning your attention, your interest, your excitement in the classroom during the classroom hours in America's urban high schools, math and science classrooms. And NSF, I think, is the equivalent of Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, probably, invested money to improve urban districts.
Let me just stop here and make a comment. I'm speaking really fast back then, 10 years ago. That's because I think I'm speaking Japanese like standard. I was speaking English just like standard Japanese. こんな感じで日本語っていうのはこんな感じだ。But now I'm more relaxed and I speak a lot slower today thanks to Eigo Nodo. Okay, let's continue.
From district education, especially in math and science.
Like education, I'm saying education. Today I would say education because I know the importance of English syllables and you just have to say them slowly, making sure that every sound comes out of it. Let's listen.
How they did it, they invested to have workshops for professional development of teachers. Professional development teachers in Japanese probably would be faculty development.
I just said right there that in Japanese it would be faculty development and in English faculty development. So, even back then I was kind of aware of the difference between Japanese and English. Faculty. But I wasn't really thorough enough with my own English too. But I feel like I was not so horrible, but still I listen to this and I feel like I'm Alright, let's get back to my presentation.
And they wanted to know the result if their investment made sense, so they asked the University of South Florida researchers to do the evaluation study of what happened. We use something called the experience sampling method. It's known as ESM. We typically with young people, you give beepers that vibrate, and then when it beeps, kids are asked to do a survey about how they're feeling and what they're doing. So that's what we did. And an engagement measure, we're going to be measuring the level of student engagement using kind of one of item response theory, RASH model. And we'll be using observation and focus group interviews with students. And we are focusing on two primary research questions. One of them is why high and low. You may be paying attention so much at one point, but eventually you kind of get bored and are not listening anymore. And another research question is that is the level of attention vary by race? And some of the previous research was reporting the lower level of engagement during the classroom for Hispanic students. So we wanted to see what happens. Now this is one way to show that how Japanese are kind of superior in some way to English. It's kind of easier to see. I notice if it's in English, you have to read it to understand. Japanese, you just see it as a picture. Okay. So it's saying 5 boys, this is how we collected the data. 5 boys, 5 girls from 2 classrooms of 1 science, 1 mathematics teacher of 2 high schools of 4 districts. Chicago, El Paso, Memphis, Miami, and that makes up 320 students. And if I say see page 136, that's where you find this table in the preceding, this big fat book. Okay. This is the distribution of students' basic characteristics. We'll look at this if we have time later. But basically, it's 4 cities and lots of ethnic groups, 4, okay, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Now let me go explain what this is. So this is, is this getting your attention? Okay, good. That's what I intended. All right, this is the beeper students carry, and this is the pad. My friend Reggie and I go into the classroom on Monday morning, and then give these beepers to 10 students, 5 boys, 5 girls. Each beeper has a number like this. Okay? So we arrive on Monday morning when we stay with kids for the whole week. Actually, we didn't go to school on Saturday, so forget about the last character over there. It's Monday. It's kind of messed up. It's Monday, okay, all the way to Friday. And the classroom is typically 45 minutes, sometimes 90 minutes. But anyway, we beep in 10-minute interval. And every interval, we are kind of writing down what's going on. You know, the teacher used this, that, use the blackboard during lecture, discussion, blah, blah. But sometimes it's 8 blocks because it's some school districts use 90-minute classes called the block scheduling. All right, but we cannot really beep them 10 minutes, you know, every 10 minutes. So we divided kids into 2 groups. So we beep group 1 first, and then 10 minutes in group 2, group 1, group. So you get beep only once in 20 minutes, I guess. Right. And every day we kind of alternate group 1 and 2, so that they don't know when they will be beeped. And then we do a survey. Of course, it's kind of problematical. You know, kids are kept being disturbed maybe, so that's problematical, but we did it anyways. If you want to see what it is, page 141. Okay. I usually, kids finish this in 1 minute, but sometimes class is kind of boring and kids spend so much time, they get so much enthusiastic about doing this survey, so that was kind of the downside of this. And this, I have 8 survey items. Based on a pilot study, we try to come up with the best 8 survey items to capture the level of engagement. And there's a meaning to this ranking, order. Can you tell what this is? And there's meaning to why I was paying attention as the first item, and there's a reason why I put it at the last. This is by the order of what we call item difficulty. It's easy to agree with the items above, but as it goes down, it's harder to agree. Okay. Well, how do we measure the level of engagement? All right, this is like a weightlifting competition, and we're trying to measure their strength, right? In that case, according to a theory of Rasch model, the probability, T-probability that you can lift the weight, or how do you call it, barbell, is a function of your power, and then this is actually weight. So if you're a really strong guy, probability goes up. If the weight is heavier, then it's hard to carry. So this regulates the relationship. You can do the same thing with the mathematical science test scores. Same thing, you have students' ability and mathematical problems, item difficulty of the problems. So we do the same thing, engagement, and we have a weight of these items, harder to say yes or harder to say no. And that we use, basically we came up with a score of engagement level, composite, and using that as an outcome, we have a multi-level model, hierarchical linear model, 3 levels. What do we mean by levels? These observations are first nested within individuals, and these students are again nested within classes. So there's a hierarchy of the data structure. What's the problem? This is like the typical OLS, regression. We only estimate one error, but we ignore the fact that this error is hierarchically structured. So we kind of decompose errors at 3 levels. Now, this is the result. Now you have to guess which color corresponds to which level. Blue, level 1, that's within individuals. And this purple is between students. And this yellowish part is teachers. So among the subjects, there's not too much difference between classes, which is a little bit counterintuitive, because when you actually talk to students, they say as if they are good teachers and bad teachers, and teachers are the primary locational variance. But in fact, there's so much variation within individuals. You know, sometimes kids are paying attention, other times they're not paying attention. Now, 2 major research questions. One of them is right here. Social organizational approach and resource and outcome. Resource is like what teachers teach, and that resource reaches students and students understand it. But in between this process, we think there's some social organizational factors involved. And let me roll some examples from Adam Gamron's work. He was talking earlier about in these schools they use reading groups. You know, kids are separated into groups by the level of ability. So that's kind of social organization. So that organization, the classroom, influences some kind of schooling processes that occur. In his example, that was probably the fact that kids are sorted by their ability, so it's kind of efficient. So it may increase the level of outcome, but it may increase the inequality. So what we want to do is to have this triangle. We think teacher activities such as group work, or group work, seat work, lecture influence some kind of process which leads to outcome. And the process, by that, I want to use the word phenomenology. There was another person, David Schornoff, now postdoc at the University of Madison, in the University of Wisconsin at Madison. And he uses this term, so phenomenology. So we are thinking activities influence what students think, and then that influences the level of engagement. Second research question, cultural approach. There's some literature in America that explains why certain minority groups are not doing really well. And then they point out that the culture that they have at home may be very different from the academic culture of a school, which is basically a little bit like a white institution people accuse. For example, I think one of the best seminal work in here is the one by Phillips. She went into Native American communities, and she studied how teachers teach and how kids are taught at home, and she finds that Indian children are more used to or are comfortable with group-oriented work. But at school they experience more like a competitive environment, and the gap between the two cultures causes problems. So we are thinking maybe this works. One of the good Israeli friends, Yair, did a similar kind of studies, and he found that the disadvantage of Hispanic students depended on instructional context. By instructional context, it means that when teaching was good, when teachers used group works and all these things, Hispanic students did okay. So we are looking for the same kind of result. So, yeah, home culture, school culture, gap, and bad. Okay. I have 5 models, and this corresponds to one of the tables I have, so you may want to kind of look at that. That's page 137, table 3. That's the kind of result table. The problem is this page spreads into 2 pages, so it's kind of hard to see. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 models, and they all correspond to this table. Model 1, ANOVA, intercept-only model, no predictor, so this tells us the allocation of variance. We always saw this in the pie chart. Second, model controls for basic stuff. You know the last item, B block, this is first 10 minutes, second 10 minutes, third 10 minutes, fourth 10 minutes. These are categorically coded. Model 3, ecological, class size, seat type, and my favorite is seat choice. I noticed, I was observing these high school classes, and in some classes, kids have arranged seating. There's a wait a minute. There's a seat arrangement. So seating chart. But other classes, kids come in and they sit together with their friends, you know. So we want to see what differences that makes. Model 4, this is about teacher, something about instruction. We want to see, you know, what teacher does make a difference. Class configuration, lecture, group, seat work, testing, nothing. And seat work, I think Japanese people we don't really understand what this seat work means, but in America, seat work means time for students to do their homework. For us, homework is work at home. In America, homework is work to be done during the classroom when they're sitting, while teachers are doing their kind of administrative work or correcting last class's homework. So there's a difference. Am I right, kind of? Yeah. Okay. Model 5, phenomenology, what students reported that what they were feeling and how they were feeling and what they were doing. The first one, really interesting. I knew at the time of BEEP, what was being taught was something that I already knew. In America, there's criticism that teachers are teaching the same thing all the time. You know, so I want to see how much of the contents covered in classroom is old or new, and then relevance. And the final item, this is talking behaviors. We asked, were we just talking at the time? Were we talking? Okay. Was that about class? And what else? Okay, so the combination of these questions creates 5 groups. Kids who are not just talking, and kids who are talking. They're talking about class, they're not talking about class. So these. Okay. You can see page 137, maybe table 2. Yeah. Yeah, page 137 and table 2. This is a summary of the table. You take a look at this, and there's 4 interesting columns on the table. You download the lecture, 41% of the time, always talking. Seat work, 35% of the time. That's kind of unbelievable, I guess, for Japanese people. You know. Okay. And kids said they already knew what was being taught 44% of the time. Kids were kind of sleepy 20% of the time. And we found lots of interesting stuff when teachers were using the group work. By the way, group work occurs only 13% of the time. Feelings heightened, like they feel more competitive, they feel more collaborative, they are having more fun, and but the level of difficulty of the content did not really increase or decrease. So, you know, we think group work is something fun. It's like a play. It's like a dumbed down version of the classroom, but it was not the case. Group work, no group work, but kids felt the same kind of difficult challenges. And they felt more relevance of everyday life, and they found themselves talking more in class about class. You know, we think of group work as some time for kids to socialize and chat, but that was not the case. I mean, this is one thing that we learned, that we can trust kids, you know, when we give them assignments. And more I do not know. Newer things were covered during the group work. We found that Hispanics had a lower level engagement, and we had positive effects of seat type. When kids don't have a choice, their engagement level was really high. And group work was good, and relevance of everyday life and test was good, and talking about class was good. Now this is the engagement level by race. When teachers doing lecture, seat work, and group work, and I did not say which color corresponds to which race, but I leave it to you to guess. White people is white, and then brown Hispanics, and yellow Asian, and then black. So maybe we can pick one. Lecture, Hispanic brown group is really low engagement. When it comes to seat work, it's okay, kind of up there. But here, group work, Hispanic kids are really paying attention really well. So this is, we were suspicious maybe Hispanic students are more sensitive about the cultural style. Okay, these are taught by black teachers, taught by Hispanic teachers, and taught by white teachers. And if we look at Hispanics, brown, they do really badly with black teachers. They do really okay with Hispanic teachers, but when it comes to white teachers, Hispanic students really do badly. But we only have 16 teachers, so it's kind of hard to generalize. So the next cycle of research has to be has to involve lots of other teachers, so that the sample size is enough. Of course, this survey method kind of influences subjects, sometimes interruptive. Although many students say it was okay, they were not so much disturbed. I think we show the utility of social organization approach, which influences how students are feeling and thinking, which influences OTL. O stands for opportunity, T stands for T, and learn, opportunities to learn. Cultural approach, we really have to go into the home culture of students, but we had some suggestive evidence to show that it may be, some race groups are sensitive. Now, practical recommendation, ecology versus pedagogy. We found the seat choice really makes a big difference. We found that round table seating is bad, and these effects were even bigger than pedagogical variables. So it's like the recommendation is just restrict students' choice to where to sit, then you do really well, kind of thing. So that was a very interesting. And we found something of a new content and challenge. So much of our classroom was so much about old contents, but when teachers use group work, kids are reporting, we are finding something new. So again, we found some evidence support for social organizational approach. And final item, culturally sensitive pedagogy. We are recommending that maybe we should study this carefully so that we can tailor our classroom to fit the needs of minorities.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. A very interesting paper in terms of measurement and findings, although I worry that you'll get the wrong sense of U.S. schools as we're repeatedly testing the kindergarten kids for reading and math and busting the high school kids and metal detectors, and really our schools aren't as bad as they might be coming across. Two main points. One, I think the measurement techniques here are so inherently interesting that I wish you had spent more time discussing and detailing them in the paper. For example, there's very little discussion of things like missing cases, whether students would refuse to fill these out. At one point, you say that 10% of the cases are omitted because they're outliers and so on. And that seems appropriate, but given that this is a new measurement technique, you really kind of have a responsibility, or at least it's new for many of us. You have a responsibility to kind of discuss that, I think, more fully in the text. My second comment is similar to the last paper. I'd be more cautious about over-interpreting policy and pedagogical recommendations from your results. At the end of the paper here, more so than in the talk, you make quite a strong case for tailoring the curriculum to the different kind of ethnic groups based on these results that Hispanics are more receptive to group learning and so on. Well, I'm very nervous about those recommendations for the following reason. Your dependent variable is engagement. Okay, and engagement measured in some way where you say yourself, the technique of measurement might influence the response. But in general, is that the goals of schooling? That we want students simply to report that they like it, they like things, they're more engaged, they're happier. Note your own results here. The highest group in your regression models on engagement were African American students, and there's a lot of attention in the opposite direction in terms of policy recommendations that closing the gap in schooling, the racial gaps. Here, again, they're the highest performing students in the outcome, and so again, engagement might be good, but it's not everything, and so you want to be very cautious in kind of making strong claims, I think.
Follow this. I noticed, if I understood correctly, you had 16 teachers for 32 classes. Does that mean that teachers had 2 classes in this?
That's right. That's right.
So there are tons of issues here where it's hard to distinguish between the effects of some policy variable you're looking at versus the effects of the people who are in the class or the teacher. And if you've got two classes per teacher, you might be able to compare. I don't suppose you would be lucky enough, for example, to have the same teacher with one class where the kids chose their own seats versus another class where they were assigning seats. Because the finding that when the kids choose their own seats, they don't pay attention very much. That's a nice finding for policy recommendations. But it could be that some teachers are strict, and in those classes they don't choose their own seats and they don't talk.
I think that's right. Yeah. And
whereas if you had some within teacher variation, and that's just one example.
Right. I think we have to be very careful about the direction of causality. I think the seating arrangement could be related to the ideology of teachers, and sometimes we found this particularly white female teacher in Chicago was using round table seating, and then she put all the kids of the same race around the same round table to help them learn. Some of them have language difficulty maybe. So these seat arrangement being reflecting the ideology of teachers rather than seating arrangement per se has the effect on the engagement plan.
Well, my question is at variance with Richard's observation that we thought that engagement isn't everything, which I agree, engagement isn't everything, but it is an important thing. And I guess I'm wondering, to respond to his comment, do you have any ability to get information on student performance, either some kind of standardized test score or grades or something? Because it would be intriguing to find out if the students that were more engaged actually ended up learning more.
That's a good question, and we don't have data. We have partial data on students' achievement level. Our observation, sometimes students in higher level classes, they look more relaxed and were not paying attention because in this particular course they were more interested in getting just correct answers for the problem sets, and they can manage to do that because they are higher level students. So I think there may not be too much of a correlation between engagement and achievement.
Just to follow up on that too, I'd like to draw attention back to that roughly 40% said that they'd seen the material before. I think that first of all is a reason to expect engagement and achievement to be somewhat orthogonal. It's also part of the pressure that teachers feel for ability grouping, so that you don't leave that 2/5 of the kids unengaged, disengaged, because they've already heard the material.
I have a question on class. I mean, the major groupings are on race. So I'm wondering, I mean, are we mixing class effects with race in these particular cases? Because a lot of times, even doing seat work is done in schools that have a lot more lower class students than middle class students. I don't really get a sense of these schools from the demographics that you provide kids because of language that they're going to have at home is going to interfere with the kinds of things that teachers often find presenting to them in the classroom. So they would prefer that there be continuity involved in the classroom rather than home effects later.
It's a very great and interesting observation. I have a suspicion that our sample is from urban poor schools, and they are poor and they are not doing really well. That's why they were selected as participants in this NSF project. And I have suspicion that seat work is more abundantly seen in those low-performing schools compared to a more elitist kind of school institutions. But I don't have any data to back that up. But if that's true, it's ironic that kids' opportunities to learn seems to be limited because of seat work. And not because of what teachers actively do, but because of what teachers don't do actively. Seat work is something that teachers don't really do anything, but they just sit at their desk and do administrative work. So that's a very ironic way of social stratification. Poorer schools have more seat work. Do you think that's the sense you have about, this is just my suspicion, but do you think seat work is found more in urban schools? Or?
I think seat work is done in urban schools. Yeah, I mean, from my observations, a lot more seat work is done in urban schools because of the control factor. The control factors have two implications. The first is that students find themselves much more restless, and the kind of thing that often we take for granted, that the ability to sit for a long period of time and concentrate is not something you should take for granted. It's actually a skill, and so teachers find it that unless they're giving them homework, a lot of other things enter into disrupting education. So their homework is to be done there. And the second thing is that homework won't necessarily get done at the home, which maybe other cultures find, terribly odd, but in the American context is less odd, more normal.
I think so. And at the elitist school where parents are educated, probably you can expect your kids to do some kind of homework at home, but in urban schools, it's kind of too much for the asking. So that's a very interesting point. I wanted to introduce one anecdote from, if I have time, from El Paso. It's a case where they have a 90-minute class. It's called block scheduling. And what that does is you have a class only twice or three times a week. Because it's a long hour, you just have it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, kind of thing. And what happens is that all the teachers we saw teach only 30 minutes, and the rest 60 minutes is seat work. That's a deprivation of opportunities to learn, but teachers mean well. But if you go to Chicago, it's 50 minutes every day. Let's listen to lots of information every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way to Friday. If you compare these two cities, there's a big difference. They are also same urban school kids, low SES, but this is how policy of school districts influences social organization of classrooms, and then that leads to social inequality of opportunities to learn.
We are already getting into the coffee break. 20 minutes. Since we don't have any discussion for Adam, is there any urgent questions for Adam before we wrap up? For those who are thirsty for the coffee, you can leave now.
That's the end of the presentation that I made about 10 years ago, I think around the year 2003 in Tokyo. What a big difference. Today, this is May of 2013. Today I speak English from the throat, and I pay a lot of good attention to my syllables, because that's how you have to do to speak with authentic English. native-like accent. Anyway, 10 years ago, even back then, I thought my English was pretty good, but it turns out that I spoke too fast. And I think, although I was able to listen to native speakers' English and I understood their questions, but today I'm not sure exactly if I was also kind of understanding everything, including how the speakers were feeling or how the speakers were really trying to say. I might have been understanding just the surface of what they were trying to say because I think I wasn't really attention to the quality of their voice. Native speakers of English may add some emotional or feeling-related information to the way they speak by resonating deeply in the throat, and that's the kind of extra information you have to be able to understand. But I'm not sure if I was really doing that back then 10 years ago. So that's it. I hope this recording of my presentation from 10 years ago was interesting for you. Many people said that I have this really resonant voice today, and many of you think that I always sounded like this, but it's not really true. Okay, thank you for listening.
英語ノードまた明日